can't wait to get to the color. Hot pink, yeah, I just want to get to the color. Turquoise, I just want to do it. You're like, all right, calm down. We started this piece in 2020. Our challenge today is to finish up the bones on the top of this last snake. We're doing just a simple color fade from like light pink to like darker, warm, like hot pinks. We're just kind of gonna be fading that color through these bones and bringing it back to the head of the snake. Last of all, obviously, we'll do like a few white highlights. I don't like to go ham on white highlights. It's always the first color to fade usually. Like there are some people who are like, they just have skin that just loves white ink and they can hold that shit forever. So I'll use it sparingly just in like a couple areas where I want to see like a change of tone. This one was actually one that I did not have a drawing ready to go when you got here. I drew like snake heads and stuff in my sketchbook, but when I came to like actually drawing out like the piece, I just kept getting like really hung up on the idea that it was wrapping all the way around the arm. I just kept thinking in my head like, this is just gonna be so much better if I just draw it on. And that way I can really work with the shape of the body and do something that's gonna like coil and twist and work around the arm instead of just sitting on one side or the other side. So all Sharpied on, we just went for it. I do like to work back to front. I like to do my backgrounds early in the game as opposed to later on. People tend to gloss over them because they're not the interesting part of the tattoo, but they are important to the overall look of the tattoo. I like to try to tackle that stuff first because it's the baseline for how that tattoo is going to grow and how it's going to change. How dark your background is will determine a lot of other factors in your tattoo. I really like to gray line my pieces and not hard line everything right off the get-go, just because I like to be able to kind of push and pull with like what goes forward and what goes back in like space and like atmosphere. And that's really hard to do if you outline everything in super dark black. It's harder to have that like softness where things go behind the thing that has the hard line. Some stuff I left it like gray lines because I like that little thin line that adds definition but doesn't like overpower the tattoo. Because of the way ink works, it goes into the skin. It doesn't sit on top of the skin. When the skin grows over the ink that you've put into somebody, it's going to be affected by whatever the tone of that skin is. So if it's a lighter tone, it's not going to change it too much. But if you have a darker tone, it's like looking through a stained glass window. So that tone of that skin is going to shine that bit of color into all of the colors that you use. And especially with white, if you're working on like a melanated skin, it's going to show through and maybe have like some yellow tones. But it just depends because some people will have like more of a warm tone of their skin, some people have more of a cool tone. So if you're using a lot of warm colors, but then they have a cool tone skin, that's gonna bring all that warm down a bit. You have to plan ahead for that. The biggest part to doing color work and not going too hard on somebody and tearing up skin or having it feel light, you need to know like to what degree you're trying to get it to be a certain color, and having like a color study is really gonna help with that. Efficiency is like a big part of how I like to tattoo. I definitely will mix colors. I don't like to just like fade from one color to another. I like to dip into the next color and slowly transition into the next color rather than like trying to just fade it out and then pick up the next one. Both techniques are valid. I just prefer to like mix them, and mixing as I go seems to work better for me. That probably comes from a history of painting. Is when you paint with like oil paints and stuff, that's generally what you do. The influence that painting has on me as an artist and as a tattooer perhaps is it makes you make decisions. When you physically have to make something and you don't have a back button, you have to like live with those choices. You have to get good at making those choices. As far as technique goes, a lot of it is figuring out the speed to which you need to tattoo. Finding a machine that matches your hand speed. If you like to go fast, you probably need something that gets it in there fast, not something that needs to go slower and take its time to really saturate. Some of the rotaries can be a little slower like that, so you need to slow down with them. Whereas like some of those color packing coil machines that are out there, that's what they do. They pack color, and so you gotta move fast, and you don't get to go over it over and over and over again. Also the size of the needle that you're using. If you're using thick needles, like standard size needles, you can't spend forever just layering and layering and layering because you're just creating bigger and bigger holes every time you go over that. So if you're using more like bug tip needles, you have more options to layer, but it's going to take it longer to get it in there. Finding the balance between the two is really important. And that also comes in conjunction with like paying attention to your client's skin and how it saturates, because everybody takes ink a little differently, and just the way that their skin reacts to machines, needles, all that stuff, it can be so different from person to person. Whatever's gonna get me and my client through it the easiest and also with the best healing tattoo is what I want. Don't box yourself in and say like, I only use this and I can only use this. It's like, you gotta try other things and you gotta know like what works best for you or for your client. I tend to color pack with, the biggest needle that I'll use is a 13. I'm using a 9 mag. Usually I prefer a curved mag, not a straight, just because they're a little softer on the edges, a little easier to get into tight spaces. And I kind of try to like start off of like a line and work my way across. It doesn't really make sense to like start in the middle. You definitely want to have a route that you go so that you know that you're hitting every spot. And if you're jumping around too much, you're not going to really get a good saturation on it. My goal is always try and do like one pass color work if I can. There are certain things it's just really hard to do that on, especially like brighter colors, red, oranges, yellows. When a person they're bleeding actively as you're tattooing them, or the skin will get irritated and red. And when that happens, it can be really hard to see whether or not you're actually packing color in skin. That can lead to like light heals, and then they come back and you have to do a second pass. I would prefer to not have to do second passes if I don't have to, just because one, you can get it in the first time. Why would you do it more than once? One shot, one kill. It's good to be efficient. If I have the time to let an area sit for a little bit, like 15, 20 minutes or so, and then I can look at it again later, like after I've moved away from it, you can kind of start to see whether or not you actually got full saturation on that. You should be able to go back in and do like little touch-ups and little like hit little areas where maybe you didn't get the most solid pass on it. Definitely have to like check it. I don't want to spend forever trying to figure out what I'm doing while the client's sitting here, so I like to have a really good plan before they sit down. It's also important to have like a goal for what you're going to get done for the day. Saying like, okay, we're going to work here to here gives you a goal for like what you should be able to achieve in a day, and it gives your client an idea of like what they need to sit for. And it's going to make everybody a little more calmer throughout the day to know that as they see that progress happening, like they're getting closer to like the end of the day. Never rush anything if you don't have to. And you shouldn't have to, you know, because at the end of the day, like everybody should want like a good, well-healed tattoo that's vibrant.